It's the Late Show with Leto and George Christie. So let's get this thing started. I have a pioneer on the show from the Hells Angels. He's been one of the longest tenured individuals with the Hells Angels. I met the gentleman and his wife. She's over there. You can't see her on the camera. Beautiful, lovely lady, by the way. And
she is, isn't she?
She is. I love her personality. She's great. She is your rock. I can see that, absolutely. But we're here to talk about George Christie. And one thing I want to say about this is that thank you for this opportunity to have you on.
Well, thank you for recognizing me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And approaching me.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that's what impressed me, was that you didn't waste no time.
No time.
You just got right with it, and kind of I know the style.
Yeah.
And I like the style.
Get you on, bring you in.
Yeah, you say what you got to say, man, or move on.
That's right. That's right. Closed mouths don't get fed. Absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
So let's talk about Hells Angels. One word to describe Hells Angels. If you have one word to describe Hells Angels.
Outlaws.
Outlaws. Yeah. Okay.
Now, you got to realize and distinguish there's a difference between outlaws and criminals.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Okay, well, people confuse the outlaw with the criminal, but, a real true outlaw is not a criminal by trade. Sometimes they're forced into criminality, and I'm not going to make any excuses for it. It is what it is. Record speaks for itself.
Yeah.
But, people have a tendency to do that. They merge the two together.
How does the police department look at Hells Angels? What's the rep?
As a criminal organization.
That's how they look at them.
Yeah, they do look at the Hells Angels as a criminal organization. Your viewers may not remember this, but there was Avis and Hertz, the two rent-a-car.
Yeah, the rent-a-car, yeah, of course, yeah.
And when they first called us a criminal organization was back in the 70s.
Avis and Hertz did?
No, the federal government.
Okay.
And the Mafia was number one, and we were number two, so we started using we've got to try harder. The Hertz and Avis, And that's what, Hertz was number one, and so Avis came up with this slogan,
right?
We try harder.
We try harder, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
So that was our catchphrase, as a joke, of course. It wasn't, we weren't accepting the fact that they were calling us criminals.
Okay.
In fact, in the late 70s, up in San Francisco, we got hit with our first federal RICO case, a racketeering influenced corrupt organization.
Who brought on the case?
A name you might recognize,
okay.
Well, some of them will recognize, was a man, a young U.S. attorney named Mueller.
Ooh.
So we were like one of his first big cases.
Sure, okay.
And Judge Conti, I believe, Conti hated us.
Okay.
And, Mueller got 2 hung juries. I'm not sure he tried both the cases, but I know the second case, they just had wasted so much money, they threw up their hands, and they accepted the hung jury.
Okay.
And they didn't come after us. But what they did was they continued to identify us as a criminal organization. And my position has always been the Hells Angels is not a criminal organization.
Okay.
It's an organization with criminals in it. And
just like any organization,
exactly,
just like anybody.
That's been my mantra, like the Senate,
okay.
The AMA,
sure.
These guys selling these pain pills that they've been, going in and out of court. I forget the name of the family, but coming up with the Oxycontins. And,
yes,
you know what I'm talking about.
I think they have. There's a movie on Netflix right now.
There is actually.
Called,
Beverly and I just watched it. It's a great movie.
It's a series. It's amazing. It's amazing. I do want to ask you this. I had a friend of mine, African American, right?
Okay.
And he was like, "You got to ask George Christie, how come they don't have any people of color?"
Okay.
In the game.
Well, let me tell you. And first of all, I've got to correct you because people watching the Hells Angel aficionados will go, "Man, you didn't correct him.
Okay.
It's not a gang; it's a club."
It's a club. Okay.
But anyway,
I didn't say gang. It's a club. It's a club.
But nevertheless, now we had black members at one time.
Okay.
We had black members in San Bernardino. We had a black member in San Francisco. In fact, if you explore my Instagram, you'll see him kneeling in the front row of a picture from the early 60s. And we had a black member in Sacramento, I believe it was. But let me tell you what happened. As we started encountering more and more criminal accusations, more and more people went to prison, the club basically took on the color line of
the prison
system. And the blacks stick with the blacks, the Mexicans stick with the Mexicans.
Right, so for the people that don't understand that.
And that's what it's not about, that we hate blacks
right.
or we hate Mexicans.
Right.
We've had blacks in the club, we've had Mexicans in the club, and in Europe there are blacks in the club now.
I had a friend in Thousand Oaks, because I moved here from Mississippi, right after Hurricane Katrina.
Sure.
And he says, if anything ever happens and we get locked up together, and he's a white guy, I don't know you, I don't want to be associated with you, it's going to be problems for me and you.
It is. And let me tell you, I had a friend of mine, and I was in prison in Texas, La Tuna Federal Prison, and I met this black guy just in our travels.
Okay.
And he was a barber. And him and I became pretty good friends. And we started it off by, I went in for a haircut. He had,
Did he give you like a fade? What do you do?
Well, he gave me a haircut. I told him, he says, well, how do you want it to look? And, I said, I want to look like George Clooney. And so he gave me the haircut, and he got done, and, I said, I don't look like George Clooney.
You don't look like George.
And he covered my face. He goes, yeah, but the hair does. And so this is the relationship I had with him.
Sure, of course.
Now we had a really good time in the barbershop. I was in there. He was doing his job.
Okay.
I was getting his job, from him. And he used to visit me at my cell, but he was not allowed to step foot in the cell.
So what was that?
Just because he was black and I was white.
But he could come closer to the cell?
He could come to the cell, and we'd sit outside of the cell in chairs and talk. But what I want everyone to understand is, when I went to his cell, I wasn't allowed in his cell either. Like
they go both ways.
Yeah, his cellmates, they did not want me in the cell, but we would sit outside the cell on the floor, and you have these plastic chairs that they don't give you the steel ones because they don't want you using them on anybody. Sure. But that's the dynamics of it, And
as a young boy, I was kind of fascinated with the Hells Angels because I seen the logo.
Young men are.
Yeah, I seen the logo. Being someone from the South, I'm like, what is that? And I would go to the Hells Angels website.
Right.
And I would go to where they had passed away.
Right.
And it fascinated me to see everyone that passed away, when they died, when they started, right? And I was filtering down, I was like, man, I don't see anybody that was black then. I always like, man. So when I talked to you, and you was like, absolutely, I'll come on and do the show. I was like, wow, that's interesting. I have to ask him about that. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, and that's what it is, and can I explain it? That's the best I can explain it.
It makes sense.
Can people accept it? Can society accept it? Well, we're the Hells Angels at that time. We really don't give a damn whether they accept it or not. Yeah, and I want no misunderstanding. I walked away from the club. I had political differences with one of the other leaders. And, I stepped away from it, so I'm no longer a Hells Angel.
Okay.
But I did have one of the longest tenures as a leader. Okay. I was a leader in Los Angeles, Hells Angels, during a very critical time. We were, the late 70s, we were fighting a motorcycle club called the Mongols.
And, somebody left a comment about the Mongols. Wanted to talk about that.
It's interesting because the war still is going on to this day.
What's the reason behind the war?
Well, the reason, it says what.
You want to come sit over here, Liz? Let's talk about it.
My wife's laughing at me, man. Hey, you know what? That's a peanut gallery.
Let's talk about it. I want to interview her next.
The actual fight that took place the first time we got in a physical confrontation with them was over jealousy of a woman at a see.
Who was this? Mary, Jesus' mama. Who was it?
Well, these two individuals, a Hells Angel, who was one of my best friends. I was standing next to him.
Yeah.
And there was like 9 of us, and there was about 40 to 60 Mongols walking towards us. And I had no idea my friend was going to do this. But this guy was now sleeping with his ex-wife. This Mongol was now sleeping with his ex-wife. And when they saw each other, man, if looks could have killed, one of them would have been dead.
Wow.
But my friend never said a word. He just hauled off and clocked this guy, and it was on, man. We were fighting.
And
these
from
guys.
that day, it still
escalated. But it goes deeper than that. It's just not over the woman. You know, law enforcement says, "Oh, it's over the California rocket." That was just.
Explain that.
Well, as a motorcycle club, as you get larger and control more area, you put on a state rocker. Like we wore the California, we were the first ones to wear the California rocker, and we wore it for years. And the Mongols told us, well, we're going to put on the California rocker as well. And we said, well, that's not a good idea. Wow. And they basically told us to go to hell. And
tell the Hells Angels to go to hell.
The rest is history, as they say. And, you know, it was, you know, we're making light of it here, but it was a very serious war. It started off with 2 Mongols getting machine gunned off their bikes on the freeway in Southern California. And then several weeks later, when the police finally released the body, the car bomb went off at the funeral home in the middle of the funeral. And then a couple of weeks after that, a couple individuals were in a Mongol motorcycle shop, and the shop blew up, killed 2 guys in there. So it was a very serious.
This is like reminding me of, like, you know, the crime family, like the mafia.
Well, you know, it's interesting. You mentioned the mafia. Sam Sorrentino, who was the underboss of the L.A. mob at the time, he just had one sentence for me. Really, George, at a funeral? Because they didn't want us fighting with these guys because we were interrupting their cash flow. Man. It's all about business.
It's all about the business.
Yeah, the Italians, it was all about the business, and we were letting our pride get in the way. And I didn't know Sam well. I later, in the 80s, spent time with him in a federal prison. The first time I went to prison, I've been to prison 3 times. The first time in 1986, I got indicted for a murder that never happened. The FBI was really hot on me. And what's interesting...
Was it like a framing? The murder was a framing?
Yeah, they had... I came back not guilty verdict. I'm smiling. I'm looking over at my wife because she was actually a witness. Now, what you have to understand is Beverly and I have known each other since we were 12. And she married a good friend of mine who passed away a few years ago. And Beverly and I slowly drifted together. But so Beverly was a witness in that trial.
Wow.
And she was a character witness for me. And
is there trauma with that? Like when you sleep at night, what do you have any type of trauma?
I've been diagnosed with PTSD.
I was going to say, I mean, I don't think someone that has lived the type of life that you live, I mean, there's so many things that you could talk about. You could talk about the Kennedys, solitary confinement, you know, fighting within your own gang, your own because I'm thinking about how the police
stand corrected.
So how the police label you.
And they do. They label us a gang. You know, they're worse. And you know what's interesting? It depends what agency you talk to. You talk to the feds, we're organized crime. You talk to if you were to talk to someone in the sheriff's department, we're street gang. Because they have different laws that govern particular counties and whatnot. So if you're talking to the feds, you know, we're a criminal organization. If you're talking to the local cops, they're probably going to call us a street gang. And, you know, that's one of the things I battled when I had a 59 count state racketeering charge against me in 2001. They started investigating me in 1998, 99. And I was in Europe, and my daughter, who happens to also be my criminal attorney, she called me. She said, there's a subpoena floating around here for you for the grand jury. She goes, I'm advising you to fly home. She goes, and you can go back when you get done. She goes, come home, appear at the grand jury,
Right.
and then, go back to Europe. So I came home, appeared before the grand jury, invoked my Fifth Amendment right, wouldn't incriminate myself on anything they asked me.
Okay.
And I was told when I left the grand jury hall, my daughter was actually told, we're going to indict him. And so I didn't go back to Europe. I didn't want them to think I was fleeing because I was going to try to get a reasonable bail, which I figured would be about $250,000. And I wound up, I had to put up $2.4 million to get a bond. And prior to my release, I spent a year in solitary confinement. And, that's a story in itself.
Well, I have to ask, because you mentioned that bond is crazy. That's a high bond.
Yeah, it's a very high bond.
It's a high bond. And for you to be able to put up a bond like that, working with Hells Angels, can you talk about the pay structure?
Well, what we used was, despite what people think, there's a lot of Hells Angels that own businesses. We're all kind of live on the fringes and outlaws. I had a bail bond company. I had a concert promotion company. I had a T-shirt company. I had a tattoo shop. And,
entrepreneur.
Yeah, and people in other areas did as well. One of the fellows that put up a big piece of property for me was a Hells Angel who actually had been in the club longer than me, and he used this piece of property for the roadie in the Grateful Dead, a gentleman named Ramrod.
Okay.
Any Grateful Dead fans out there, they'll know who Ramrod is.
They got a lot of them,
Yeah, they'll know who Ramrod is.
Sure.
And what was interesting, it took me a year to get all the property cleared because the government kept saying, well, it's bought with dirty money. It's bought with dirty money. And I'll tell you a funny story. Court's not funny, but it does have moments of levity in it, if you will.
Okay.
And my mom took the stand, and I was going to use my mom's property. And
your mother took the stand?
My mother took the stand. They were questioning her about her property. She was going to put up her property for me, and she was going to cash a bond, a $10,000 bond for part of the bail money.
Okay.
And so the prosecutor gets her up there on the stand and, well, tell me about your son, Well, he's a good boy. And you ever heard the term commingled?
Commingling, yes.
Money commingled?
Yeah, money, yeah.
Yeah.
That's against the law.
Yeah. So he asked her, he goes, well, you pay your own rent? And she goes, well, I don't pay all of it. And she goes, well, how do you pay it? And she goes, well, my son pays part of it. And, she goes, he's a good son. And the judge the prosecutor looks at the judge and says, we got commingled money here, Your Honor. We have to disqualify her funds.
Wow.
And so it was really hysterical. My mom, man, she's an old, Greek woman. She has a temper. She was like 82 at the time, 83 maybe.
Yeah.
She said, you think it's funny to fool an old lady? She goes, you're not funny. And then she looked at the judge and she goes, I'm going to tell you something, Your Honor. He's also got $15,000 of my gambling money when he robbed it from me when they served a warrant on my house. They had served a warrant on my mother's house, and they found $15,000 cash in her mattress that she used for gambling.
Oh, man.
And she told the judge, she goes, I want my goddamn money back, Your Honor.
Yeah,
And I'll be damned if the judge didn't give it back.
He gave it back?
He goes, you're going to get your money, Mrs. Christie. And so that was the highlight of my federal or state racketeering trial. And, they overcharged me. And a lot of the, ultimately I did a lecture at Pepperdine Law University about ethics because they really went above and beyond, broke a lot of rules.
I mean, you also work with CNN, right? Don't you?
Well, I'm a talking head on there from time to time. I haven't been on there since I've been back from Spain. I went to Spain for several years to work on a project and got caught up in that COVID over there.
Yeah.
And destroyed the project. And, Beverly and I started flirting on the phone a little bit. So
Look at Beverly.
Had to pack up and come home. I enjoyed.
Wait, I'm
seeing
sorry. I
it.
got caught up on flirting. She's flirting, and you packing up and coming home.
I packed up and came
Wow.
home, man. You know, and it's funny because I overstayed. You're only supposed to stay there so long because of COVID. Being the outlaw I am, I
course.
said, "The hell with it, man. I'm not leaving.
You're
when
not
it's time to
staying,
leave."
yeah.
And when I got to Denmark, I came home. I just did I stopped off in Denmark just for a quick layover, and then I flew out. But I did a 8-episode. It's either 8 or 6. I can't remember. On the Nordic bike war that I helped bring to an end, a conclusion. It was just amazing. The Hells Angels and the Banditos were fighting it out in the Scandinavian countries.
Okay.
And when I got to customs in Denmark, the woman recognized me, and she's like looking at me. She's looking at my, and she goes, "Man," she goes, "You overstayed. You overstayed." And she goes, "Man, you're still an outlaw."
You're still an outlaw.
And I go, "You're damn right." And she stamped me.
Yeah.
And
she stamped you still.
She stamped me, let me go,
Let
and I
you
said, and I'll tell you, I said, my passport's flagged. So,
Right now?
Always, yeah. So anywhere I go, I got to go through customs, and like last time I went to the UK, I was in there about 7 hours.
What's that stress life like? Living like that.
Well, you kind of get used to it, but it's stressful.
So you get used to it.
Yeah, you do get used to it, and you know what?
Wait, let me ask you a question, Beverly.
Okay.
She doesn't have a microphone. What's it like for Beverly being a witness to it and seeing how you live and being around all that? Like, what's it like for her?
I think it's hard on her, and I'll tell you, when she was a character witness for me, my 1986-87 trial, the feds, the FBI, froze her bank account to teach her a lesson.
To teach her a lesson.
Yeah, they froze her bank account.
And they took all my money out of the bank.
Yeah, they froze her assets. Well, I mean, they released it ultimately.
Sure.
But it was a slap on the hand for Beverly.
Just because she was a
Don't be hanging out with these
Don't be hanging
outlaws,
out with these
Beverly.
outlaws, okay.
And her husband and I were known each other. I've known Beverly since 12. I've known her husband, who passed away a few years ago, probably 15, 16 years old.
Right.
I mean, so we have a long history.
A long history, sure.
Yeah, and Beverly wanted to come to her friend's aid. And Beverly was also good friends with my first wife that's passed away. Mm-hmm. But Cheryl and Beverly were buddies.
One word to describe Beverly. Describe one word.
She can be scary.
That's what it is?
Well, you know what?
She's
She's everything a guy.
I got you on the spot now.
She's everything a guy that wants some really solid support. She's everything a guy wants.
We call that ride or die, George.
She's also, you better be ready for some harsh lessons, man, if she don't like what you're doing.
Oh, I know.
I mean, you can tell this by...
The vetting process to talk to you through Beverly was very on point.
And I
respect it.
And that's what I do. I sync her on whoever, and she comes back and she gives me her bullshit meter. No, that guy's all right. No, that guy ain't no good.
Right. Okay.
But,
that's good. That's good to have somebody like that on your side.
It is.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And look, any successful man has a solid woman behind him. And, one of the things I used to say is, if you see an outstanding Hells Angel, there's, there were good Hells Angels, then there were outstanding Hells Angels, and the outstanding Hells Angels always had a good woman behind them.
Got a question. What about the Mongols? If they see you, what's that interaction like?
Well,
because you're such a public face.
Well, they know I'm no longer in the club. And I'm not going to say anybody's name, but I communicate with the Mongols on social media.
Okay.
They write me, and I talk to them. I was always a peacemaker in the Hells Angels.
Right.
I brokered peace between us and the Outlaws, us and the Mongols, the Banditos. That's why I participate in that story on the Nordic Bike War, because I made several trips to Europe. The Scandinavian government petitioned the American government, and they sent Hells Angel and a bandito over here that I negotiated with, along with a guy named George Weggers, who's rest in peace, George. He was the leader of the banditos.
Okay.
And so, you know, from time to time we would fight skirmishes, and then you know we would get these temporary you know, stays on violence. But you know, it's stressful. You get on your bike and you want to ride across the country.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a lot of the guys wore bulletproof vests. You know, we rode hard and we rode fast when we were going through, you know, outlaw territory, bandito territory, or Mongol territory if we were having a problem with them. And,
Politically, where do you feel like the Hells Angels are politically? Are they involved in any politics?
No, I don't think so. I think that was one of my thoughts. I wanted to take the club to a more political, I wanted to make it more of a political entity to get the feds off our ass, if you will.
Yeah.
And there was a state senator in Colorado, and I can't remember his name. I'm embarrassed. He was an American native.
Okay.
And his name's right on the tip of my tongue.
Around what year?
Late 80s.
Late 80s. Okay.
And he started coming to Sturgis. And we were trying to develop a relationship with him. So we would have a senator that would back us, because we were some of the guys. This is when they started that witness protection stuff. And, you know, in the old days, you get in trouble, you go to prison for 18 months, you know, and then all the laws changed in the 80s. And, you know, I'll give you an example. We had a couple of guys in the club that were meth cooks. And in the old days, a meth cook gets busted, he'd do 18 months. You know, have 4 or 5 million stashed, come home, and go on a spending spree. I shouldn't laugh, but I can't help myself.
I get it.
So, you know, around 1986, 87, 2 of my friends get busted.
Okay.
They both got 40 years.
40?
40 years. So
for the same crime?
Yeah, the same crime that, you know, 5 years earlier they were doing 18 months for. So what happens is the dynamics of everything changes. You get guys in the club that in the old days maybe do 18 months, and the feds hit them with, hey, you're going to do 30, 40 years, you know?
Yeah.
You know, people start thinking, man, you know.
Start tattletelling.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
They call that snitching for the people that don't know.
Yeah,
call it the good old snitch.
And not only are they extracting themselves from the criminal activity they, you know, got caught up in, some of them are getting paid. Like,
oh yeah, I seen that.
Yeah.
George, I seen there was
there's
an individual. Well, yeah, and I could be wrong, but I think the figure was somewhere around $60,000 annually as a snitch.
Well, that happens. Now, there was a former member of the Mexican Mafia who testified against me in 1987, and this is back in 1987.
Yeah.
He had received $250,000, and if I would have got found guilty, he had a $50,000 bonus.
Bonus on top.
Yeah, bonus on top.
Bonus on top.
I mean, that's just, it's amazing. It's just
that is amazing.
A bonus on top. And he had a $750 a day heroin habit that his handlers ignored because they felt the juice was worth the squeeze to get me. They were going to allow him to shoot his heroin and you know, wait around till trial date came.
I got one for you. So obviously you've been around. There's a lot of things that you've witnessed and seen.
Right.
Is there anything that is a secret to this day that you have just not let out? Something that you kind of keep truly to yourself? Not even your closest friends know. People in the biker community, not even family.
I think there's a lot of speculation, not only in the biker community. There's a lot of speculation in law enforcement, but I'm going to take that with me.
There you go.
So, you know, yeah. But, you know, there are things I talk about.
But there's things you don't talk about.
And there's things I don't talk about. But, you know, the things I talk about never incriminate anybody.
Okay.
Never put anybody in jeopardy, never put anybody in prison, because I have a luxury. They're all dead.
They're all dead.
You know,
But
I'm
could-
kind of like the last man standing,
Okay.
with the exception of a handful of guys.
Yeah.
You know, and so you get on this social media. I got a big social media following.
Huge,
I got
yeah,
half a
huge social
million
media, yeah.
people following me, and I have people. Oh, you're a rat. You're giving up secrets. Well, you know what? No, I'm not a rat. I'm not giving up no secrets. And,
not putting people in jail.
I'm not putting nobody in jail.
That's what a snitch is. When
Yeah,
you,
and I'm not putting anybody in jail.
Okay.
But I think somehow, you get up on the internet and, how much is Mr. Christie worth? It goes anywhere from 2 million to 30 million. So, you got these people like, you're making money off the club. I mean, they read that shit. It's got to be true.
It's got to be true.
It's on the internet, man.
Yeah. How much does this celebrity make? And they make
Yeah.
this much money.
Yeah,
It's got to be true, and it's not always the case.
Right. And for years, the local police, they thought I had $30 million hidden somewhere. And, my standing offer was, you find the money, we'll split it. And of course, they never took me up on it. But, I had an old nemesis, Mike Bradbury, who was the district attorney here in Ventura County.
Okay.
And we had like a little thing going back and forth. He saw himself as a very astute businessman. And
But was he?
well, I got number one mover and shaker, and he got number two, and that pissed him off.
Okay.
And, that started a vendetta. Truly
Really?
started a vendetta. I have
Wow.
friends in law enforcement.
Sure.
Do I respect the boundaries? I do, as well as they do. They don't ask me anything. I don't ask them anything.
Okay.
But I developed and nurtured relationships with them over the years. And some of them have risen to high positions in law enforcement, not only in Ventura, but in Oxnard. Some of them with the federal government. But they give me information. They go, man, this guy's gunning for you, man. He's
coming for you.
He's mad,
Yeah.
You got number one, you got number two.
Yeah.
He was offended, And if you were to go into his office, now when I did the Outlaw Chronicles for the History Channel, I did 6 episodes. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I've seen it.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
I like the background too.
Yeah,
love like the little oak in the back.
Yeah,
I love the flannel. I love all that. Yeah.
So listen, the Bradbury, the History Channel went up there to interview him, and he declined at the last minute. He was kind of led him on, said he'd do it, and then at the last minute he backed out. He has 2 pictures in his office. There's a picture of Charlie Manson and a picture of George Christie.
Wow.
And for your younger people, Charlie Manson was a nut from the 60s who recently died in prison. Put
had a cross on his head.
On his head. I think he put a swastika on there too.
Something like that. Yeah,
I don't know. He had that Manson family. And,
he was a musician, they say.
well, he wanted to be. I don't know how good he was. I know that I had a friendship with Dennis, I think it was Wilson, the drummer for the Beach Boys.
Okay.
And Charlie was trying to
Join the group.
Well, he was trying to push Dennis Wilson to support his music.
I see. I see.
He had a twisted, skewed view of things. And what you have to understand, when he was up at the Spawn Ranch, the Hells Angels, the Satan Slaves, the Question Marks, and the Straight Satans used to go up there and party with him.
Okay.
And I think he somehow, in his warped mind, thought that was going to become his army once the revolution hit. He kept thinking the Beatles song. I can't remember what song specifically, but one of the Beatles songs was a secret message
for him,
and for his followers.
Yeah, that's a little crazy. I have a question about how does someone join the Hells Angels?
Well,
and if they join, what's the word I'm looking for? Initiation process.
Well, a lot of people ask me about, is there initiation? No, there's not really initiation, but there's a long process, a long
vetting
tenure.
process.
Yes, long. And, we were somewhat lucky here in Ventura because we would follow them all the way to their childhood, their background, and
Wow.
And that's what most people do, most charters. But takes you 2 years to even be considered for membership. I mean,
So how does that go? Do you go to the website? Hey,
no, you got to know
I drive a
somebody.
Harley.
You got to know somebody, man.
You got to know somebody.
You got to know somebody,
Okay.
and the guy's got to raise his hand for you. And people are reluctant to do that because people go bad.
Vouching for somebody.
And hey, man, you brought that guy around. You handle it. The guy didn't work out. They tell him, you handle it. You brought him around. So it's a big responsibility. Big responsibility for the person that's petitioning the club to become a member.
Yeah.
It's a big responsibility for the guy that raises his hand and goes, yeah, he's okay.
Right.
Because I've sat in rooms before when everybody looked at the guy, you said he was okay.
Yeah.
This guy's no good.
He's no good, yeah.
He's a rat now.
He's a rat now.
So, it's a very strenuous process on the inductee, and the person that raises his hand for him, people have a tendency to go back to him. They won't confront the prospective member. They'll confront the guy that raises his hand for him. So, I mean, it's a long process. It's even gotten more involved as the laws have changed.
Sure.
We had a Fed infiltrate the Hells Angels in Arizona in the late
Kind of like a Donnie Brasco situation.
Yeah. And,
Okay.
He was actually.
How high did he get?
Well, he says he made it, and the people surrounding him say he didn't. And I got to be honest with you, it's questionable. We don't, he may have made it,
Oh, it's questionable.
but he didn't last long.
He didn't.
And I'll tell you, why he didn't last long?
Why?
His ATF superior was a little jealous of him, and the night he said he made member, the next day they pulled him out. And his undercover, that 2-year journey was all shot to hell.
Wow,
They
that's
pulled him
interesting.
out.
That's
His name is Jay Dobbins, and he, he still thinks the Hells Angels are criminals, and he was actually on Outlaw Chronicles with me, and I just did that show in Denmark.
Okay.
He was in that show as well. I mean, we weren't together,
Of course.
but I have a podcast, and we're negotiating. He might come on my show.
That's gonna
It'll
be
be
nice.
the first time
It's going to be nice.
I'll be face to face with him, and he'll be face to face with me.
It's going to be interesting.
It will be interesting. I think a lot of people, and I don't consider law enforcement. If a law enforcement officer infiltrates a group, they're not rats. They're doing their job.
They're doing,
man.
of course.
They're doing their job,
Yeah,
and that's one of the things I've always been adamant about. And I've had people write shit, cop lover, and whatever. But I don't pay attention to
your
that
comments they're crazy.
Yeah, I know they're
the
crazy,
comments
man.
are crazy. I get comments of, man, you got such a legend like George Christie, man. How'd you pull that off? And then you get comments like everything else.
He's no good. He's a rat. He's
everything
this.
else. Everything else.
Why you giving him a platform? You get law enforcement people that go, why you give that guy a platform?
Yeah.
He's a criminal.
Yeah.
And I don't try to glorify my life, but I'll tell you something. I don't apologize for it either.
I was going to ask you,
It is what
do
it
you have any regrets?
I have no regrets.
Nothing.
And I tell a funny story about a regret. And this is a really funny story.
Okay.
We're going up to Sturgis, and we've been riding hard all day long, man. And we took a really extreme back road because the cops were hassling us. And me and the other leader of the other club, Sam Bernardino, we were riding with. I was up front. Their leader was up front. And we pulled into a gas station, and this cop started circling. And we started looking at him, and he pulled in, and then, gets out of his car. The old car, I mean, it rocked. This was a big country boy,
Yeah.
Big old white
Big
boy.
guy.
Yeah, big
Cornbread.
guy. Cornbread with his guns,
Woo!
so he could draw with either hand,
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh man, this is in for it. So he goes, who's in charge? And everybody looks at me. And he goes, let me talk to you for a minute. So he almost gets childlike, and he goes, I want to ask a favor of you.
Favor?
Yeah, I go, what? And, it makes me uncomfortable, I want to ask a favor of you.
Right.
And he goes, I said, okay, you can ask. And he goes, hey, look, man. And there was a sheriff election sign in the background. He goes, you see I'm in the election this year. And I go, yeah. And he goes, what I think will cinch the election is, he goes, can I tell everybody I ran you guys out of town?
Oh, come on.
I swear to God. He said, and my only regret is I never went back there to see if he won the election.
Oh, man.
Because I told him, I said, hey, you do whatever you want once we leave. I said, I don't give a
man, we
damn.
could probably Google that, right? Can't we Google who won?
I don't know. I don't remember
that's
his name.
Hilarious.
But that's what he asked me.
That's the only regret.
That's my only regret. I didn't go back and find out if he won. But I think he won. My instinct tells me he won.
You know we're going to find out. We're going to let you know.
I hope you do.
Okay, I got another question. This is the softer side of George Christie.
Okay.
Are you a romantic man?
Well, I have my moments, I guess.
Is this true? Okay, all right, okay. He's very kind. George is very kind. What is your definition of a romantic night? I'm asking questions I wouldn't ask you before.
No, you are. You're catching me off guard here.
I'll catch you off guard. So,
my idea of a romantic night is for Beverly and I to go out to one of our favorite restaurants.
Which is?
Maybe Hosie's in Santa Paula.
Okay, Hosie. Shout out to Hosie's in Santa Paula. Okay.
We also like to go to Mama Rice, Thai food on Main Street in Ventura. We, we're easy to please, but I like spending time with her. Okay. I like
little Netflix and chill. Yeah,
right now we're in the Billions. We're in the last season of Billions.
Billions is good.
Yeah, so we're checking that out.
Billions is good.
And we bet on little things. I'm not going to tell you what. No,
that's okay.
I don't want to know.
That's okay.
You don't want to know what we're betting. But,
maybe I do want to know.
You may.
Maybe I do want to know. What are y'all betting on? What about sports?
Well, Beverly's like, you want to talk football?
What's the team, Beverly?
There she is, right over there.
Well, I go more for the man.
Oh, she's going for the guy.
She goes, you know who she likes?
No, who does she like?
What the hell's the guy that?
What team?
The guy that played the game on LSD.
Aaron Rodgers.
That's her man. That's her go-to man.
Now he's on the Jets.
Huh? Yeah. Now, I got to tell you, evening for Beverly and I is a little microdosing.
Okay, all right.
And from the 60s.
Yeah, of course.
Good friends with the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, of course.
Good friends with Osley, who made the best LSD on maybe the world,
Yeah. Well, what you listening to?
What I'm listening to,
Chris Isaac.
I've been listening to a lot of Chris Isaac.
Chris Isaac.
Yeah, Beverly and I.
The devil.
Speak of the Devil. Got to, have you heard his version of Speak of the Devil?
No, I have not.
You got to check it out, man. It's good.
All right.
I like Chris Isaac. I just did a blues show.
Blues show
with a friend of mine.
Playing?
No, I picked out all the music for the
that's
show, nice. And
so you got the playlist together.
I got the playlist.
Okay.
And Little Muddy Waters.
Muddy Waters.
Loving Muddy, and John Lee Hooker's always one of my favorites.
Okay.
But I'll tell you who I really like, and people have told me, well, that's not real blues. I dig the Canned Heat.
Canned Heat?
Canned Heat.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look that up.
Look the Canned Heat up. Now I'll tell you what the Canned Heat did in the '60s.
Okay.
Is they revised the blues along with like the Rolling Stones and some of these other groups. But I was playing originals, and then I would do like the Stones version of one of these old blues songs.
Yeah.
So I had a blast. I got a wide variety of music. Like I'm going to hit you now with one of my favorite ones.
Hit me with it. Let's go.
And you're not going to be ready for this.
Okay.
Bally High from South Pacific.
No, I wasn't ready for that.
No, I know you weren't. You know?
I wasn't ready for that.
It's almost like you lost your air.
But speaking of, hey, George, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, getting to know about you, man.
My pleasure.
Consider
Really.
you a friend now.
You are a friend.
And anything else that you're doing, you're more than welcome to come on the platform. Yeah, so this is The Late Show with Leto and George Christie. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Appreciate it, man. That was great.
It was great. Yeah, it was fun.